Good evening, Chair. Calls to order Zoning Board of Appeals, case number 5970. Council, we have Mr. Snee presenting on behalf of the applicant, and I believe Mr. Crick on behalf of the opposition. You will both have 15 minutes to present your case. And Mr. Snee, I believe we'll start with you.
I thought Mr. Crick was the appellant, Mr. President.
He requested, Mr. Crick requested a final argument in this matter. So Mr. Crick will go first.
Mr. Crick, whenever you're ready.
And if I may, since he doesn't have an attorney, I was explaining to him that if he wants some time held in rebuttal, that you would come to, if you could meet the individual.
Could I have 3 minutes for final?
Yes,
Thank you. Should I start?
whenever you're ready, sir.
Hello, my name is John Crick. I'm the owner and operator of Hidden Haven Farm, located at 2420 Carson's Run Road. I have spent more than 40 years growing crops at that location and expending considerable effort and resources to improve the economic value of that farm. I am a member of a diminishing number of Harford County farmers who make sizable contributions to the economic well-being of the county. Thank you. I am the neighbor most affected by this proposal, owning land bordering on two sides to the west and the north. This proposal actually would be proposes to be built in a notch in my land I own to the west and the north of this proposed development. I will demonstrate in my presentation the inaccuracies and oversights that allowed the initial approval of the MCI Verizon proposal. Based on a reconsideration of the factual information, you will have opportunity to soundly reject this proposal. I will begin with a major misstatement in the staff report. I'm going to quote it directly. Quote, "And this expansion should not be substantially detrimental to the adjacent properties. The sides and rear yard are heavily wooded. This natural and wooded area would further provide adequate buffering to the adjacent properties." So I'm going to ask, what's the natural and wooded area that would provide adequate buffering to the adjacent properties? There are only two potential answers. Both are unacceptable. First answer is that MCI Verizon property is currently wooded and would continue to provide a buffer. But that answer is to be rejected on the basis that this proposal would eliminate approximately 3.5 acres of wooded land on the MC Verizon property and replace it with a building, cooling towers, internal combustion-driven generators, a roadway, and a parking lot, all built to the boundaries with my land. So the second potential answer is that my property to the north and the west of the proposed development is currently wooded and can serve as a buffer. This answer is rejected on the grounds that my property is owned by me and is not available to MCI Verizon to be a buffer to the untoward effects of their development. Even so, this identity of my property as buffer appears in several presentations of the proposal, both by so-called expert testimony at the hearing and in the so-called sound study presented afterwards. The staff report misstatement about a natural and wooded area providing adequate buffering to the adjacent properties is clearly a fallacy. And because this statement underpins the judgment that this proposed development would not adversely affect adjacent properties, that judgment is likewise erroneous. As an example, the zoning hearing examiner's decision, bottom page 6, states that, I quote, "There will be no particular environmental impact and there will be no particular visual impact as the portion of the property in which the building is to be constructed is fully screened by existing vegetation." That so-called existing vegetation is on my property. It's not available for use by MCI Verizon. Let me make several points about the disclaimed environmental impact. Who cares about the destruction of 3.5 acres of woodland? I'll read to you from Mr. Gregory A. Rapisarda, the zoning hearing examiner for case number 3290, February 86, his decision regarding an earlier proposal to expand the facility. I'll quote him directly. Section 25-8.3 I-5 states that the telephone microwave facilities may be granted as a special exception in the agricultural district, provided that there be a thorough evaluation of the environmental impact of such a use, including but not limited to the following: 1, effect on wildlife; 2, effect on plant life; 3, effect on land surface; 4, effect on economically recoverable resources; and 5, effect on open spaces. Mr. Rapasarda's granting of a special exception is conditioned by the following: that the microwave facility shall not have an adverse impact on wildlife, plant life, land service, economically recoverable resources, or open spaces. The 1986 variance approval was given with the knowledge and agreement that a buffer would be maintained by MCI along adjoining properties to satisfy the stipulation cited above. So what's the current status of the requirements set forth by the hearing officer in 1986? Why are they summarily dismissed in the current approval process? I see no thorough evaluation of environmental impact. I see no argument for the beneficial impact of this development on the environment. I, on the other hand, have stipulated my concerns for environmental issues in my testimony at the hearing and in both my letters, August 12th and September 7th, 2022. These letters were submitted on the record while the record was still open and need to be given consideration in the appeal process. They are not directly addressed in the zoning hearing examiner's decision. A few of the concerns expressed in those letters. Noise and light from the existing facility will no longer be buffered by the current vegetation. Our enjoyment of the night sky will be further infringed upon. The addition of extensive impervious surfaces will increase the runoff and add to already existing erosion and pollution going into the Chesapeake Bay. The proposed facility will drive off wildlife and ruin our enjoyment of such. Wetlands and stream location are not correctly portrayed on the submitted site plans. An environmental study conducted by the developer was not presented. A good portion of the building site is currently listed as hydric soil, most commonly associated with wetlands. Currently, there is a stream water collection facility for livestock on my land, where the stream flowing off my land onto the MCI land, then back onto my land. So where that stream flows back to my property from MCI Verizon is a facility for collecting water to water livestock. Stream water flowing from the site onto my property will no longer be available to me for watering livestock, as it will be contaminated by the chemicals found on the impervious surfaces such as roofs and roadways, as well as snow and ice-controlled chemicals. The development's visual impact, lighting and noise, will eliminate my ability to develop 3 building lots on my property adjacent to MCI Verizon. It's the best drained land on my farm. It's ideal for building lots. Lost value amounts to some $835,000.
Objection. It's not in the record.
I didn't realize I was going to be interrupted. In the record are letters, August and August.
Objection, it's not in the record, Mr.
Those letters are
Attorney.
in the record, and they are available for review, and I would strongly recommend that they be reviewed.
The letters are in the record, as well as Mr. Sneed's response to those letters. They were all directed to Mr. Cahill.
The issue of noise warrants special attention. Mr. Cahill, the present hearing officer, in his wisdom, recognized the potential impact of noise from the proposed additional generators and cooling towers. He instructed representatives to do an acoustical study for the cooling units and for the generators at the property line, the receiving property line. This directive was confirmed by both Mr. Ruff and Mr. Snee, pages 53 and 54 of the hearing transcript. Page 58 and 59 put forth Jeff Crick's points about clarifying the conditions and assumptions made for the model employed in the study. So how does the submitted study comply with the requested information? The study does not at all comply with the directive of the hearing officer. Page 7 of the study references general variables of the model. No specific conditions such as leaf cover on trees are specified. Rather than model the noise levels at the property boundaries as directed, the study uses the location of 3 residential properties, one of which, R1, is mine, at about 400 feet from the property boundary. Read the study, page 8. And mention is made of the tree buffer to the northwest of 2606 Carson's Run Road, again confirming the use of the features of my land to mitigate the untoward impact of the facility's noise on the surroundings. The so-called study fails to even model the noise from the existing 8 and 2 additional generators, even as at those extreme locations. By the way, the approvals in 1986 and 4 allowed for 3 generators on the site. There are now 8 generators on the site. It is still zoned agricultural. That industrial use seems to have happened, I don't know how. And they propose in this proposal to add 2 more generators. These and multiple other questions were raised in my September 11th, 2022 letter to the hearing examiner. A request was made to have opportunity to question and challenge the findings of this study, yet no opportunity was afforded me or other protesters. So what do we have with respect to clarification of the noise issue? We have a well-delineated directive by the hearing examiner. He told him exactly what to do. We have a study commissioned by the developer, paid for by the developer, submitted by the developer. The submission was not in accord with the examiner's directive. The study received no review by any governmental agency with expertise in noise. The study was not subject to public questioning or challenge. It simply was accepted as written and incorporated into the hearing examiner's decision. In summary, first, there's a major misstatement in the staff report that there is adequate buffering provided for this project. The existing buffering will be near totally destroyed by the elimination of 3.5 acres of woodland for construction of the project. The adjoining woodland on my property is not available to be claimed as a buffer. It is my use, not MCI's. Secondly, project creates major environmental problems for me and the broader community. It is out of compliance with the earlier 1986 hearing officer's conditional approval, has negative economic impact on my ability to develop my adjacent property. It destroys a resource available to me on my farm by eliminating my use of the stream for watering livestock. Adds to the pollution currently flowing from the facility to the nearby Chesapeake Bay. And again, I would reference the letters that I have submitted with the details on those matters. Finally, the sound study paid for and submitted by MCI Verizon totally avoids the requested information put forth by the hearing examiner at the initial hearing. It substitutes modeled impact on property locations hundreds and thousands of feet from the facility in place of the required impact at the property boundaries. And the process employed disallowed review by a government agency or questioning and challenges by the public. It was a totally bogus process. I ask your careful review of the detailed information submitted by me and others in the record. I ask that you note the inaccuracies and misstatements in the documents, and I ask you to render a decision of disapproval of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crick. That'll leave you 4 minutes and 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Thank you.
Mr. Snee.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council, Board of Appeals. Joseph Francis Snee, Jr., on behalf of MCI Telecommunications Corporation and McKinstry Ascension LLC. This pertains to 2606 Carson's Run Road, Board of Appeals. I would note at the outset, Mr. Crick does not even live at the premises. The proposed expansion is for a non-conforming use, which is less than 50% for a communication station and data center. Currently, there's 113,900 square feet. The expansion would be 23,881 square feet. We're well below this threshold. The expansion would be 21% rounded up. The existing structures, there is a data processing center there, which is defined at section 267.4 of your zoning code, and a communications tower, which is a lattice tower, and both of those are in existence. Next slide. we go. So that is 2606 Carson's Run Road. That's in Aberdeen. It dates back to the Rearman administration. It has water and sewer to the project, notwithstanding the fact that it's outside of the development envelope. And that was done for purposes of economic development. This property is known as MCI Telecommunications Corporation. It's known as map 57, parcel 137, and it's 35 and a half acres as listed on the SDAT record which you have in front of you. Now, the history of the MCI dates way back to May 7, 1999. The company currently is 100% wholly owned by Verizon Business Global LLC, which is 100% wholly owned by Verizon Communications. So it's all Verizon. It is land use, the agricultural designation. The current zoning is agricultural. All the building setbacks we've complied with. So the front is 100 foot, the side is 80 foot, the rear is 80 foot, and the parking required, we meet all the requirements. We're adding 5 employees, that is it, because these things don't require a lot of employees. And the current would be 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. to additional 5 people. As I said, the existing site is 34.5 acres. The building right now, we have 2 of them, 48,400 square feet, 65,500 square feet, for a total of 113,900 square feet. As Mr. Crick stated, we go back to 1983, and we started off with a decision of the hearing examiner back then, Mr. Hinderhofer, and it was a special exception granted to allow for the expansion of existing communications facility, which was granted, and the applicant was authorized to remove the existing temporary structure and to replace them with a 5,000 square foot masonry building. That was followed in February 14th, 1986, also by Mr. Rapisarda. It was a special exception granted for the following: replacement of guide tower, construction of a 240-foot by 170-foot structure, construction of 80-foot by 40-foot garage, and construction of an 8-by-foot shelter. That was followed February 27, 1987, with another Board of Appeals decision, again by hearing examiner Gregory A. Rapisarda, and it was for height variance in order to permit a building to be constructed to the height of 51 feet. Now, we're going to show you the existing elevations. That's, if you drive down Carson's Run, this is what you would see to date. And they're just elevations. Go ahead and begin. So, I disagree with Mr. Crick. We're not going to impact any wetlands. If you see that slide, in the front of the proposed building is the NRD, the wetlands, and we are staying out of that. So we're not going to impact that at all. In the back is the stormwater management facility to facilitate that building. We have no impact whatsoever on Mr. Crick's land, none. These are the elevations for the proposed use. And Megan, just slide through those, please. You'll see that they're in harmony with the existing structures out there. The slide doesn't do enough justice, quite frankly, but they will be the same aesthetic appeal as the existing buildings. So let's get to the law, because that's what it's all about. Section 267-21, which talks about the enlargement or extension of non-conforming uses, and that's what we're talking about. First, the proposed extension or enlargement does not change to a less restricted or more intense use. The current use is communication center, data center. The proposed use is the same. There's no difference. And the use will not change. Next, the enlargement or extension does not exceed 50%. So we're well under that, as I said before. We're at 21%. So we're not even close to the 50%. Next is C, the enlargement or extension does not violate the height or coverage regulations. The maximum height in the AG district is 3 stories. We're going to be at 22 feet and 7.5 inches, well below 3 stories. Next, 267-21D, the enlargement or extension would not adversely affect adjacent properties, traffic patterns, or the surrounding neighborhood. And you can see by the tree cover there, you know, we're removing some trees, but look at how dense that is. And again, the Cricks don't live there. It's all surrounded by woodlands, and we're going to remove some to build that building, but that's it. Next is the limitations, guidelines, and standards set forth in Section 267-91. The Board of Appeals are considered by the board, and they were by Mr. Cahoe. Pardon? That's an aye, I'm sorry. Okay, and then the board has to also consider then the number of persons living or working in the immediate neighborhood. There's not many. Traffic conditions, we're adding 5 employees. That's it. The orderly growth of the neighborhood and community, the effect of odors, dust, gas, facilities for police, fire protection, all of which have been taken care of. So we have no impact whatsoever on the neighborhood. The degree to which the development is consistent with generally accepted engineering and planning principles, all of which were articulated in a very, very thorough Board of Appeals case in front of hearing examiner Mr. Cahoe. The structures in the vicinity, schools, houses of worship, theaters, hospitals, there are none. The purpose is set forth in the master plan. They all relate back to the master plan, going back to the 1990s, and consistent with the Rearman administration. The environmental impact, the effect on sensitive features and opportunities for recreation and open space, there are none. The preservation of cultural and historic landmarks, there are none. So we get to the staff report recommendations. And this was one of the cleanest one I've ever seen in 38 years of law practice. The applicant shall prepare the required plans for review and approval. We'll do that. That's an engineering function. It's not a legal function. And then the applicant shall obtain all necessary approvals, permits, and inspections for the project. We'll do that through the engineers. It's not legal. So, go back, Megan. It's not in there, okay. So, Mr. Cahoe concluded, it is recommended that the request for an expansion of a non-conforming use be approved, subject to these conditions. The applicant shall prepare the required plans. We'll do that. The applicant shall obtain all necessary approvals. We'll do that. And we have to maintain all of our generators to 3 or fewer concurrently running under maintenance with no overload. And we will do that. So with that, Mr. President, members of the Board of Appeals, we would respectfully request that you affirm the hearing examiner's decision, which was thoughtfully articulated by Mr. Cahoe. And I have an affinity for Mr. Crick. He and I get along very well, but we just respectfully disagree. So we ask that you affirm the hearing examiner's decision.
Thank you, Mr. Snee. You will have left yourself 5 minutes, 45 seconds for any type of rebuttal. Mr. Crick? You have
Oh,
4
Mr.
minutes, 30 seconds, sir.
I'm sorry?
You have 4 minutes and 30
Thank you.
seconds.
Mr. Snee has very adequately presented the history of the development of the site. And I would just pose...
Can you pull that microphone closer to you, sir?
I'm sorry, get rid of this thing, too. I would just pose the question as to what are the limits of the development of such a site in an agriculturally zoned district? Started out with a tower in a shack, basically, and then that shack was converted into a building. That building was converted into another building, and then that building had an expansion upwards, and now they're asking to destroy 3.5 acres of the site to build yet another building, and not just a building, cooling towers, generators, parking areas, a long road accessing that part of the property. So what are the limits when it comes to expansion in an agricultural district? I don't know the answer. I know that Mr. Snee just quoted something, you can't exceed 50%. I'd like to hear the rest of that sentence. 50% of what? And I believe it's 50% of the original approval of a variance. Much different than 50% of what's there now. I don't know the answer to that. That's not my expertise. But my question really is, to what extent can you keep expanding in an industrial way? When I say industrial, I'm talking about generators that are powered by Caterpillar and Cummins, high horsepower engines, to the total of 10. And when the current goes off, those all have to be employed together. So think of the noise they're all making together, not just simply exercising them under no load. That would be exercising them under full load, which means full volume of noise. So again, let me cover what I put forth earlier. The staff study inaccurately portrays a buffer to the development. Pictured up there was very nice, but that's my land he's picturing as woodland buffer. The proposal process failed to take into account the impacts on my property and the environment. In fact, I've shown that the proposal would have significant and negative impact on my property. I covered some of those in my presentation tonight. More details are in the letters that I have prepared and the testimony for the original hearing. The sound study was a failure both in terms of outcome and process. You can't believe a thing in that study. It doesn't even have a modeled picture of the sound wave that would be created by generators. It's just not in there. Oh, there's a picture of the sound that would be created by cooling towers, and in fact it does show detrimental impact on our property boundary, but it's not totally there, and we had no opportunity to question and process it. And with 34.5 acres at this site and many other sites across the country, MCI Verizon would not experience a hardship to locate this facility elsewhere and thereby preserve the agricultural zoning in Harford County. Let me just reiterate, I've spent a good part of my life building a farm and participating in that activity in Harford County. I hate to see that infringed upon. The comment that I don't live there, well, my mailing address is not there, but I spend most of my time there. You choose. Am I entitled to the protections that are afforded for agricultural zoning? I think I am. I think you need to take that into consideration and reject this proposal. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Crick. Mr. Snee?
Nothing further, Mr. President.
Thank you. With nothing further, this will conclude this hearing on case number 5970, and it'll be taken up at a future meeting. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We'll take a short recess. Good evening. Chair calls to order legislative session day 23-003. Please join us for standing for the pledge, followed by the opening prayer by Councilwoman Boyle-Siles. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, I come to you tonight asking for guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. help us engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. Amen.
Amen. Agenda item number 4, presentation proclamations, we have none. 5, consideration of petitions, applications, appointments, and nominations, we have none. 6, special presentations, we have none. 7, approval of minutes, public hearing January 10, 2023, zoning appeal case number 5966, H. Edward Andrews III and Irene Padilla. Legislative Day 23-002, January 10th, 2023. Are there any corrections to the minutes? There being no corrections, the minutes stand approved. Agenda number 8, introduction and consideration of resolutions. Resolution 00123, Consolidated Public Improvement Bond Series 2023. May I have a motion?
Council President, I move to approve Resolution 001-23.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Guthrie. It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 001-23. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mr.
Penman?
President. Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to call attention to a particular project listed on this bond bill, Resolution 00123. The project number is A204103, described as the Harford County Sheriff's Office Central Precinct and Training Center. This bond bill funds a small portion of the new precinct project to a sum of $694,000. It's my understanding that this line item is to pay for services already rendered for engineering and design. So when this bill is approved, it authorizes the county treasurer to use a $15 million bond for the purposes of paying for all the listed projects. And I would fully expect the county to fulfill this sale and the funding of this bond and the obligations listed within, based on the details requested and the authorization by the county council. What I find interesting is that previous bond authorization had been approved by the county council pertaining to the Harford County Sheriff's Office Central Precinct, specifically Bill number 220116 right here, which was approved by the previous council on August 22nd, 2022, which was authorized by the Harford County government to use $120,360,000 to fund certain capital projects. One of those projects in Bill 22016 is $20,500,000 for the Harford County Sheriff's Office Central Precinct and Training Facility. My question is, if Bill 22016 was reviewed and approved by the county administration and the county council, just like this one may be, why has the project been placed on hold with very real potential of being cut altogether? That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Penman. Anyone else? Ms. Dixon?
Mr. President?
Aye.
Mr. Guthrie?
Aye.
Mr. Penman?
Aye.
Mr. Giangiordano?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mrs. Bull-Sottles?
Aye.
Mr. Bennett?
Aye.
There being 7 votes in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, Resolution 001-23 is hereby approved. 9, introduction of bills, we have none. 10, introduction and consideration of amendments, we have none. 11, call for final reading of bills. Bill 22-025, revisions to the Harford County Code, Article 1, Chapter 4, Legislative Branch, as amended. May I have a motion?
Council President, I move to approve Bill 22-025
Thank you. May I have a second?
As amended, sir.
as amended.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Bill 22-025, as amended, has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Ms. Dixon?
Mr. President?
Aye.
Mr. Guthrie?
Aye.
Mr. Penman?
Aye.
Mr. Giangiordano?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mrs. Bull-Sottles?
Aye.
Mr. Bennett?
Aye.
There being 7 votes in the affirmative and 0 in the negative, Bill 22-025 as amended is hereby approved. Agenda item number 12, enrollment of bills. Bill 22-025, revisions to Harford County Code, Article 1, Chapter 4, Legislative Branch, as amended, is certified as being the text finally passed. Agenda item number 13, unfinished business, we have none. 14, new business, we have none. Ms. Dixon, we're going to go to comments from attending citizens. Do we have anyone signed up to speak?
We do, Mr. President. I believe we have 4 this evening. Our first speaker is Cassandra Beverly, followed by Ron Stuczynski.
I would remind each of you of your time. Good evening, ma'am. Name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Cassandra Beverly, 137 Alice Ann Street, Bel Air.
Whenever you're ready, ma'am.
Thank you. Good evening, Council President Vicente and members of the council. I'm Cassandra Beverly. I'm Chair of the Harford County Caucus of African American Leaders. For those unfamiliar with our organization, we are a nonpartisan group of county residents whose mission is to advocate for fairness, equity, and inclusion for African Americans in this county. Since our inception, we have worked to address issues such as a lack of employment parity within local government and Harford County Public Schools, health disparities, and economic inequality. As we celebrate the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I call upon the members of this council and our fellow residents to resist the temptation to look backwards and pine for a time when America was quote-unquote great. Historically, America has been great for some. However, far too many people, especially African American people, were not invited to feast at the table of America's greatness. For African Americans and other minorities, a great America is what lies ahead if we continue to work towards the beloved community. We look forward to an America that truly reflects the Founders' Creed that all men, and I'll add women, are created equal. That is the great America that we seek. I believe a focus on our common humanity will provide the glue we need to survive the challenges that are ahead. I urge you and everyone in our county to support truth over lies, fact over fiction, and to reject the voices that seek to divide us by focusing on our differences. As you are being encouraged to take some action or not take an action, ask yourselves if it will improve the lives of all the residents of this county. America has been at her greatest when people come together without regard for color, ethnicity, or faith to accomplish a goal. I've been so inspired by a very recent example of how great this country can be, witnessing the outpouring of love, compassion, and support for the Buffalo Bills football player Damar Hamlin. No one seemed to care that he was black. Everyone saw a human being, and for that reason alone, worthy of our care and prayers. I have witnessed great acts of kindness and compassion and care from Harford County residents. As we celebrate and commemorate Dr. King, let us support those things that elevate and celebrate each other and ignore the voices that say that we can't care about or treat with dignity and respect people who may be different in how they look, speak, love, or think. Do not fear the truth, embrace it. Celebrate the wonderful diversity of this county and allow each citizen to benefit equally from all that this county has to offer. I look forward, Council President Vicente, to your annual visit to the caucus. Mr. Bennett has reached out to us, and we look forward to meeting with him. The caucus would be happy to have any other member come to meet with us to work on making the county a great place to work and live for all who reside here. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, Ron Stuczynski, 319 Marina Avenue, Perryman. I just wanted to update on some of the new council members on what we're dealing with in our community if they are not aware. The Mitchell Freight Terminal Project. One warehouse would be the 9th largest warehouse in North America. The project would be the 7th largest development in North America, the 13th largest square footage-wise in the world. We are 5.6 square miles of a peninsula. We are already at 56% of coverage of warehousing and freight distribution in our community. With this development, we'd have over 80% of all the county's development. But for what? As a matter of fact, we just had another warehouse vacated. It's 571,000 more square feet that just opened up. But I'm asking again to the council, some of you have heard it before, are we ever going to get another water study? Our last one was done October of 2000, and that was before most of the things built in that community were built. APG did one in 2002 where they did find pollutants in the water that actually, poisons that actually cause thyroid cancer. Meanwhile, they continue to build, continue to pollute our waterways, and the county has failed to enforce any of the current codes to stop what's happening to any of us. It has to change. A lot of you may not remember, but we went through a long period of speakers and a DAC meeting and a SIM meeting. Since then, the developer has actually changed his plans, which requires by code, if a plan is submitted substantially different from the plan presented at the community meeting, another community meeting and notification as specified under the section of the code shall be required. So they changed their plans almost 60% since the first time we've come here. And we've asked repeatedly for another DAC meeting and a SIM meeting so that residents have the ability to speak up about the project. In March of 2022, before we actually had our moratorium, Seagreg made a fake Facebook page entitled Perryman Improvement Project. It received 1,100 comments, of which 98.7, 1,085 were negative. They took the page down. They also had Whit McQuaig stand outside with 5 Mexican workers holding signs saying, "We need jobs." And I do remember, actually, Pat came out and you addressed me in a situation when it happened. The new plans actually take away jobs that they needed so bad, yet none of them are here defending their project. We've had over 300 speakers with over 16 hours of comments, and each week they have no one here defending on why this is so good for our community. Last but not least, Tony G, good luck to your G-men this weekend. I hope they do pull a victory for us, and of course the Niners. Bang, bang, Niner gang, go Niners. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Angie Lane, followed by Vicki Jones.
See, or she made me do that.
Good evening, ma'am. Name and address for the record.
Angie Lane, 319 Marina Avenue. I don't know a whole lot about politics. I'm a Republican because my mom said that's what Jesus would do, and I always want to do the right thing. But I am a human resources director, and so I often have to find creative ways to say no while maintaining relationships. So I can relate, and I highly respect your positions. I'd like to request an alternative way to provide our address prior to speaking. For someone who is a victim, for someone who is a survivor of a traumatic crime, it is very difficult to stand up and speak about anything. Thankfully, my fiance does most of the talking, so I usually don't have much more to say. But even with an active protective order, saying where I live makes me feel very unsafe, so I appreciate that consideration. Feeling safe is something we all should have a right to. I've lived a lot of my life without this comfort, feeling scared and unable to sleep at night. I've had to work really hard to get myself where I am now, and I'm proud to say that I've done that. No one should ever have to tell a story like mine. I realize this isn't the place for stories, so if you want to know mine, you'll have to read it in the Aegis. I only bring this up to make a point that feeling safe is just as important as being safe. You've heard a lot of people share their concerns about the infrastructure and physical safety. I'd like to point out that mental safety is equally significant. The illegal handicap parking is just an example of the attitude that is moving into our area. Homeless camps are setting up behind the ShopRite and the park and rides. Men are coming up and asking me for money at the gas station. I don't even feel safe going to the local store anymore. All of these things contribute to mental health, and I feel the county has an obligation to consider all elements of safety. Rezoning and building to benefit developers is killing our county. There's a list of reasons why this is not good for us, and there's only one reason why it continues, and that's money. What good is money if you feel unsafe? What good is money if you're too scared to go to the grocery store to spend it? What good is money if there's no quality of life? Crime is real. And if we don't do anything to stop it, our houses, our homes, the place we all go to feel and be safe will no longer be where we find peace. When considering action to approve more development, please do the right thing. And if you don't know what that is, just ask your mom, what would Jesus do?
Thank you, ma'am. Call your next speaker. Oh, I see her
E.
coming.
Jones.
Good evening, ma'am. Name and address for the record, please.
I'm Vicki Jones, President of the Harford County NAACP, P.O. Box 525, Aberdeen, Maryland, 21001. I want to take a few minutes to say I agree with the last speaker about giving addresses. I know this discussion came up last year because there are some bad actors in this county stalking people who are trying to speak out for things in this county. Even though I know each of you, I have not met some of you in person, but I will be requesting time. On behalf of our executive committee, I'd like to congratulate each of you on your appointment. I'm not sure how much new members know about the NAACP, but I'll share the local branch has been around since 1920. We have almost 300 members and 2,000 social media followers. We continue to grow, and our membership is diverse. Our mission is to achieve equity, political rights, and social inclusion by advancing policies and practices that expand human and civil rights, eliminate discrimination, and accelerate the well-being, education, and economic security of Black people and all persons of color. I have a few things that I'd like to talk about tonight. The first is term limits, which I was aware was discussed at the last meeting. We are, by and large, in support of them. Although there are some downfalls, the adoption of term limits tend to lead to more diverse legislators, especially with regard to race, ethnicity, and gender. Although historically we haven't had many issues with candidates staying for lengthy terms, we do have some who have been in office for several terms, and their view on politics and issues has not changed, and changed with the times, and as the county continues to diversify. We need to make sure there is an opportunity for other voices, and that our elected positions aren't power tripping or using the role just for the benefits. Next, I'd like to recognize that today is the National Day of Racial Healing. This is the 7th year. On this day, individuals, organizations, and communities across the U.S. come together to explore their common humanity and build the relationships necessary to create a more just and equitable world. We have work to do in this area in this county. Lastly, we have our annual MLK breakfast this Saturday. In attendance are local C-suite leaders, representatives from Harford County government, and many from the community. We have 200 ticket holders, 50 over our goal, and 53 on the waiting list, which we finally had to cut off. I'd like to thank Council Members Riley and Bennett for registering to attend, and for Council Member Sottles for responding with her regrets. And I think we'll see you there too, President Vincenti. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am.
There are no more speakers, Mr. President.
Let's move to agenda number 16, business from council members. Mr. Guthrie.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have a couple of things. First, I wanted to report that Joppatown High School had an announcement that they wanted me to make, and through the Harford County Public Schools, they've announced that Joppatown High School has been approved by the Department of the Army to establish a U.S. Army Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, JROTC program, effective February 1, 2023. Eighth grade students throughout the county will be able to join the JROTC at the Joppatown High School. Applications will be available Tuesday, January the 17th, and Friday, February the 10th on their website, which is hcps.org, and in all the middle school counseling offices. Also, the county executive has put out a notice to needing volunteers to serve on the Harford County Community Action Boards, and in Joppatown and Edgewood, which I represent, they, just like the other areas, they hold regular meetings for community members to stay informed, discuss local issues, and provide valuable feedback to the county executive and his office. The Edgewood CAB meetings always meet on the second Thursday, And the Joppatown CAB meeting always meets on the first Monday of the month, absent of a holiday. If it's a holiday, they meet on the following Monday. And those meetings usually run from about 7 to 9, and those meetings are at the Southern Precinct, which is 1305 Pulaski Highway, except July, August, and holidays, they're excluded. One other thing, congratulations to Joppatown Elementary School, named December's the Friendly Family School winner. HCPS Parent Academy, in partnership with Chick-fil-A of Harford County, is excited to announce that Joppatown Elementary School is the December winner for the school system's Family Friendly School Award Program. This month, a total of 21 schools were nominated, 4,058 people voted, and were cast by the community among the nominated schools, naming Joppatown Elementary the winner with 891 votes. Not only does the school earn the covenant title of family-friendly school for the month of December, but the entire school staff will be treated to luncheon at the program's HCS of Harford County. I want to give a special shout-out to a couple runner-ups, Swans Creek School, Emerton Elementary School, and William James Elementary School. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Guthrie. Mr. Penman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have three things I would like to comment on this evening. The first is an update on the term limit legislation. Myself and colleagues have continued to discuss and evaluate the term limit legislation. My hope is to have a more concrete update at next month's meeting. My second message is a constituent request pertaining to the destruction of the bus shelter and abandoned vehicles and homeless at the Park and Ride at 924 and 24. I've initially reached out to the Maryland State Police Bel Air Barrack for increased patrols and to address the abandoned vehicles. In addition, it's my understanding that the Harford County Action Agency has been monitoring the homeless situation and will be attempting to find placement for anyone they encounter that is homeless. I'll also be making contact with the state to request repair of the damage of that bus shelter. My closing comment is to again advocate to move forward with the previously approved capital budget project for the Harford County Sheriff's Office Central Precinct and Training Center. I'd like to thank the sheriff, acknowledge the sheriff, Jeff Gaylor is here, along with Colonel Davis and command staff members. Since it was discussed at last week's meeting, I've heard several community members reach out and thank me for the support of the precinct, supporters that also see the advantages and public safety need along the Route 40 corridor. Every day this project is delayed is one day it could be serving our community. I would point out again, from my previous comments this evening, the Harford County Sheriff's Office Central Precinct and Training Center was funded based on County Council Bill 220116. If that funding is withdrawn, that is the very definition of defunding. I do thank County Executive Castley for the continued conversation. I had a positive conversation with him over the weekend, and my hope is to, after careful evaluation, the decision will be made to move forward with the Harford County Sheriff's Office Central Precinct. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Penman. Mr. Giangiordano.
Thank you, Council President. My condolences to Mr. Charlie Helmer on his recent passing. He moved down here from New Jersey, worked with my father at Lever Brothers, so my condolences to the Helmer family. I was on the council when we approved the bond hearing for the new precinct. I went out and did the ribbon cutting for the precinct that was to be coming. So I was informed by Sheriff Gaylor that there was some talk about maybe not moving forward. So I know we appropriated funds for that. I know we spent funds for that, probably over $1 million in design and everything on that. So I'm looking forward to that being completed and implemented. I know we need that in that area. So hopefully we can get that worked out. Ronnie, I forgot to tell you last time when we were out, when we did the ride-along over there, I came back to Bell Camp and I saw a sheriff deputy ticketing somebody in the handicap parking, so I was glad to see that. And I know Sheriff Gaylor sitting here. Hopefully we can maybe get more deputies looking and ticketing people that are illegally parked in these handicap zones. I know I've looking into fire zone, and hopefully that we can work out some kind of
bill that mirrors the municipalities so that the police officers can also write tickets for the fire zone. We're looking at the cost for that as well. Also, I've had a lot of calls from the Bel Air Athletic Club, sudden closing that was announced yesterday on Facebook. I did follow up and call quite a few people to see if anybody knew what was going on. Unfortunately, the town of Bel Air didn't know anything. I've talked to some of the lawyers who are working at the Harford Mall project. They did not know anything. I actually went up to the athletic club this evening because I heard the COO of Wellbridge was there. Hopefully, she was going to talk to me, but she did not give me any information. I did see WBAL outside. They asked me to comment, which I certainly did. I started going to that club when I was 16 years old. At a Bel Air High School, we would go, football team, we would pay $1 a day to work there. So over 44 years, I've been a member of that club. It is absolutely devastating to the community. We don't know what's going to go there. We certainly don't want apartments, or really we don't want anything other than the club. So I don't know how all of a sudden they can just terminate their contract. I was trying to find out if they didn't pay the rent or what the status was, but they want to repurpose that property, which nobody knows what that's going to be. But it definitely is heartbreaking. There's over 200 people that are going to lose their job. The parking lot is filled every night. So I'd like to find out what's going to go with that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about term limits and Councilman Penman. Councilman Penman has not spoken to me other than initially talking about whether I was for term limits or not. He's worked with the other council people and brought up different proposals. We have yet to talk to me about it. I have talked to probably over 100 people, policyholders that I have, business people that I have in the community. Not one of them has said to me that they are for term limits for the local level, for the state level, for Congress, yes, but not for term limits. Prior on this council, we had Mr. Curtis Buell, who was an African-American. He's no longer on here. Jacob Bennett was voted in. We had another gentleman running for the same position as Dion, Mr. Woods, who was an African-American. They did not vote him in. So I think for inclusion, we certainly want inclusion. The people out there are the people that vote and vote people in. So I certainly am a little disappointed that I haven't been consulted on anything. And I think tonight was the night to talk up if everybody else is going to bring up their opinions. That is my opinion. That is the opinion of 100 people that I've talked to so far. I'll continue to talk to people. If anybody wants to call me, I'd be more than happy to talk about it. But as I said, I've not had one person that I know outside of some of Mr. Penman's people that are for term limits. So thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Jandredan. And Mr. Riley.
I'd just like to say, today we had a very informative county council tour of some county facilities. I want to thank Joe Salifka, Joe Simonik, and Rick Ayers. They took their time to really get us to understand what's going on in their operation. I asked Sheriff Gaylord just this evening before the meeting if he would do the same with his facilities, and he said he'd be glad to. So I'm going to work out with Eric Roby to see if we might be able to do that same informative tour with the Sheriff's Department. That's all, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Mrs. Sottles.
Hi, everyone. Councilman Giordano, I'm a little upset that you left me out of your comments because I am for term limits. But
Well, you certainly haven't come and talked to me either.
I'll do that. I'll put that on my
A little
calendar.
late.
Hi, everyone. Last Tuesday, I told you I had the opportunity to meet with Sergeant Sanchez of the Harford County Sheriff's Office Community Policing Unit. I did get an update from him, and he has made numerous traffic stops. He has issued warnings, citations, and on one occasion involving a non-compliant truck driver made an arrest. So they are out there working and doing their best to try and make sure that things are getting safe. He's also spoken with the Aberdeen Police Department, and I will be talking with him again tomorrow for an update on the meetings that he has planned for the Amazon warehouse. I also have a meeting planned with State Highway tomorrow to discuss the possibility for flashing signage, as I'd spoken about before. So that will be happening tomorrow as well. Thank you guys for submitting your concerns. Just please, again, be safe. Don't confront the drivers. Don't take pictures if you're not at a safe distance. Just stay safe. On another note, I was disappointed to hear last week that there has been a hold put on the Sheriff's Office new Central Precinct and the training facility project. I understand that it was funded by the previous county executive and approved by the county council. So I plan on also speaking with the county executive to find out a little bit more on a time frame, when it will happen, if it will happen, why it's been placed on hold. And I'm hopeful that the council and citizens of the county will have an answer on that very soon. Thank you all. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Ms. Saddles. Mr. Bennett.
Hello. So this Friday, January 20th, it's going to be the 5th annual Fairy Tale Superhero and Ninja Festival at Abingdon Library from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. I will be the guest reader at 4:20 p.m., and I'm very excited for that. Pending me reading very quickly, I imagine I'm the last guest reader of the event. And I look forward to reading After the Fall, which is the sequel to Humpty Dumpty. On January 21st at 9:30 a.m., the NAACP is hosting their Martin Luther King Jr. Freedom Breakfast at Level Fire Hall. Ms. Jones already spoke to that so well tonight. I just want to point out that they are collecting books that evening, or that morning, so please bring your new and lightly used books to support the children in our community, and I think that'll be great. January 21st and 22nd at 9 a.m., there's going to be a Maryland boating safety course provided. The class is going to be held virtually for both, and both sessions are required. This course satisfies the requirements for operating a vessel in Maryland waters, and the cost is $20, but it's free to first responders, active military, Sea Scouts, and medical/hospital staff. Registration can be found on the Havre de Grace Maritime Museum website. January 25th, there's going to be a suicide prevention training for veterans and their families at the American Legion Post 47 over in Havre de Grace. You can sign up by emailing sjballard@harfordcountymd.gov. On a sadder and more personal note to our district, this past week we heard of the passing of Mr. Robert Green from Havre de Grace. He was a lot to our community. If you walk through town really at any point, I'm sure you ran into Mr. Green in his Cat Club hat. He was a proud ambassador of the Cat Club and really promoted, beautifying our community and picking up trash and taking care of one another in that way. In addition to that, he served on the board of directors of Commercial and Savings Bank. He was a member of the Havre de Grace Historic Preservation Commission and was overall just a very active member of the community, consistently at meetings, consistently present, and consistently there in a pleasant manner. Everyone who knows him was very pleased to know him, and it's very sad to hear of his passing. A few things I just want to touch base on that I've been working on. In January, I've met with 3P consistently now a few times and continue to work with them on upcoming legislation to support them. Also met with the NAACP this evening, Ms. Jones, and look forward to consistently attending their meetings as a member and to just be informed of the concerns of our community in that way. I also was handing out proclamations all over the place. It was very exciting to give a proclamation to Officer Teresa Adams on her retirement and to celebrate her on the tremendous work she did for our community as an SRO. And also to celebrate the opening of Ultimate Drink Cafe, which is a black-owned business here in Harford County, and a really great spot and a perfect location for our families as they're leaving school, walking home, to be able to get a snack, a hot drink, and in the summer, a cold treat, and to be able to enjoy our community. In addition to that, I began serving on the Mental Health Core Services Board and attended my first meeting. It was very informative to be a part of that process. I was a little disappointed to hear that they're expecting to only be able to provide their workers a 2% raise this upcoming year, with the expectation of how their budget is going to be. I hope that that's something that we can address in this next budget cycle to make sure that they have enough money in order to pay all their workers and give them a raise that matches inflation so that we can take care of people who take care of people. In addition, my staff, which really means Heather, who's incredible, attended the Abingdon Woods hearing, met with the Susquehanna Ministerium, attended the Ministerium, thank you. Future Heather, help spell phonetically when you get to big words. Attended the Route 40 Business Association luncheon and took a tour of various Harford County facilities today. I'll finish out the month meeting with the Harford Center and the Health Department, the Harford County Action Agency, and the ARC, attending a bridge dedication and a ribbon cutting ceremony, and serving on the Harford Center and the Citizens Nursing Home Board. So it's a busy few weeks as we get ready to start February, but I'm enjoying each moment and I'm glad to be here. So that's all my comments for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. We'll go to business from the president, and I'll take Mr. Bennett's lead. He finished up talking about board and liaison assignments for different commissions and things. And outside of their regular duties, council members serve on at least 30 different boards and commissions. And each one of them do an excellent job. But I would like to point out Ms. Sottles with her report back from Harford TV. I think it's a great idea for all council members, not every meeting. I know that not every meeting with every board position warrants a report back, but you heard Councilman Guthrie talk about education issues. Each one of these council members can report back on boards, and I do appreciate that. This past Wednesday, I had the opportunity to attend and speak at the Route 40 Business Association luncheon, and it was extremely well attended, I believe, and I want to thank Leslie Stein and the members for the opportunity. Colonel Davis was there, as well as other members of the community and business community. I want to thank all of my council colleagues. Each one of them were there. In Mr. Bennett's case, Heather was there. So I really appreciate all of you being there. Not that there was anything great to hear, but I appreciate your support. And along those lines, there is going to be a Route 40 Revitalization Committee meeting. It's scheduled for February the 13th with several of our stakeholders and community partners. A few of our council members will be in attendance, as well as the county executive and some of his key directors. So we're looking forward to a positive meeting there. These are meetings that have been ongoing for quite some time, and it's been a while since one was hosted. So I look forward to seeing as many of you that's been invited there as possible. With that, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thank you.